The phone wouldn't stop ringing. First Mom, then Dad, then Michael, then Sophia, and finally Ethan. One after the other, their names lit up my screen like a chain reaction of panic. But I didn't answer, not this time. I let it buzz, vibrating against the glass table until the sound became nothing but background noise. Then I picked it up, looked at the glowing screen, and pressed block, one by one. Mom, blocked. Dad, blocked. Michael, blocked. Sophia, blocked. Ethan, blocked. And just like that, the chain that had tied me down for years finally snapped. I should have felt guilty. I should have felt afraid. I should have felt something other than this strange, quiet peace that settled in my chest. But no. What I felt was a sense of freedom. Sweet, overdue freedom. For the first time in more than a decade, the weight of the Carter family's survival wasn't on my back. The mortgage, the endless bills, the groceries, the medical insurance, the tuition, none of it was mine to handle anymore. It was theirs. I leaned back into my chair and closed my eyes. I could almost see the chaos happening in the Carter household right now. Dad pacing the living room, his veins bulging at his temples, wondering how on earth he was going to pay the mortgage this month. Mom clutching her phone in one hand and dabbing fake tears with the other, probably calling Aunt Diane already to tell her what a selfish daughter I'd turned out to be. Michael pretending to be the man of the house while secretly panicking because he couldn't even pay his own rent. Sophia rolling her eyes dramatically, muttering that I was just being difficult again. And Ethan, the loudest of them all, shouting into the phone that I was heartless, that I was abandoning them, the same family that had abandoned me when I needed them the most. The same family that had watched me drown in silence and whispered behind my back about how I'd failed. Now the tables had turned. I whispered the words out loud, just for myself. It's my turn now. And as I said it, I smiled. Not the kind of smile you give when you're cruel. No. This was the smile of someone who had finally chosen herself over the chains of obligation. But before you think I'm heartless, let me tell you the truth. I wasn't born this way. I didn't grow up dreaming of cutting off my family. I became this person because of them, because of the years I gave up, because of the sacrifices I made, because of the way they turned their backs on me when I finally needed help. You might be wondering, what could push a daughter to walk away from her own family? Well, let me take you back to when it all began. I was 21 the first time it happened. It was the middle of July, and the house felt like an oven. The old air conditioner had given up 2 weeks before, and Dad kept saying he'd call a repairman soon. He never did. That evening, the whole family sat in the living room, sticky with sweat, a single fan humming uselessly in the corner. Mom was folding laundry. Dad was dozing in his chair, and my younger siblings were sprawled across the couches, scrolling through their phones like they had no care in the world. Then the mail came. I remember Dad's voice when he opened the envelope, a deep sigh, the kind that carried weight. "Final notice," he muttered, tossing the letter onto the coffee table. "They'll cut the electricity tomorrow if we don't pay." The words hung in the air like smoke. Nobody moved. Nobody said a word. Michael, my younger brother by 2 years, didn't even look up from his phone. "Don't worry, Dad. Something will come up." "Something will come up?" Mom snapped, her voice sharp with irritation. "That's what you always say, Michael. What's going to come up this time? Magic?" Michael shrugged, unfazed. Sophia giggled as if the whole thing were a joke. And Ethan, just 16 at the time, muttered, "Maybe the power company will forget." I stared at them all in disbelief. The lights were about to be turned off, and this was their reaction. That was the first time I realized how different I was from them. I picked up the letter, read the bold red letters across the top. Final notice, and felt a knot form in my stomach. The bill was $126.42. It wasn't much, but it was more than my parents had. And without thinking twice, I pulled out my debit card. "Don't worry about it," I said quietly. I'll take care of it. Mom looked relieved. Dad nodded like it was expected. And my siblings? They didn't even thank me. They just went back to their screens. It was like nothing had happened. But something had happened. Something inside me shifted that night. Because paying that one bill turned into paying the next, and then the next, and then the one after that. Rent, groceries, car repairs, tuition, medical insurance. It never stopped. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that things would get better, that Michael would find a stable job, that Sophia would stop being careless, that Ethan would grow up, that Dad and Mom would figure something out. But the months turned into years, and temporary became permanent. Every time I wanted to say no, guilt came crashing down on me. Mom would remind me how much they had sacrificed to raise me. Dad would say, "You're the eldest, Emily. It's your responsibility." And somehow I believed them. I believed that love meant sacrifice. I believed that family meant giving until you had nothing left. I believed that one day when I needed them, they'd be there for me too. But I was wrong. It would take almost 10 years before I realized just how wrong I was. And when that day came, it broke something inside me that could never be fixed again. By 28, I was living two lives. On the outside, I looked like I had it all together. I had a good job at a mid-sized marketing firm, a tidy apartment with a view of the city skyline, and just enough money to make me look like I was winning at life. People at work admired me. Neighbors envied me. Friends thought I was a superhero. They didn't know the truth. Behind the smile, behind the polished shoes and neat dresses, I was drowning. Because almost every dollar I earned went straight back to the Carter family. It wasn't just electricity bills anymore. It was the rent for the family house. It was Dad's prescriptions. It was Ethan's college tuition. It was Sophia's endless emergencies, car repairs, dresses for parties, credit card debt she never learned to manage. And Michael, he was always chasing some new business idea that never lasted more than 3 months. When his schemes failed, I was the one left cleaning up the mess. "Emily, you know I'll pay you back," he'd say. But he never did. And the worst part? None of them saw the problem. To them, I wasn't Emily. I wasn't a daughter or a sister. I was an ATM machine in heels. I remember one night in particular. It was close to midnight and I was still at my desk at work. The office was dark except for the glow of my computer screen. My shoulders ached, my eyes burned, and my brain felt like mush. I had been working overtime for weeks, trying to earn a bonus that might finally give me a little breathing room. My phone buzzed. "Mom." I answered, exhausted. "Hi, Mom." She didn't even say hello. "Emily, the car insurance is due tomorrow. Your father forgot, and we don't have enough in the account. Can you transfer the money tonight?" I closed my eyes and rubbed my forehead. "Mom, I just sent money last week. Can't Michael?" "Michael is busy. You know how he's struggling to get his business going." Her voice carried that sharp edge she always used when she wanted to guilt me. "Emily, don't make me beg. You're the eldest. It's your responsibility. We need you." Those 3 words always cut through me. We need you. I sighed. "All right, I'll handle it." "Thank you, sweetheart," she said, her tone softening instantly. "You're such a blessing to this family. God will reward you." But the moment I hung up, I felt hollow. Because I knew this wasn't about love. This was about dependence. That night, I worked until 2 a.m., my stomach growling because I couldn't even afford takeout. All my money was gone before it touched my hands. And yet, in the morning, I plastered on a smile and showed up at work like nothing was wrong. On the train ride to the office, I overheard 2 women discussing how their families had always supported them, helping each other through tough times. I remember thinking, what does that even feel like? Because for me, it had always been one-sided. At work, I was praised for being reliable. At home, I was used for being reliable. I was the glue holding everyone together, but no one ever asked what would happen if the glue were to crack. And deep down, I knew it was only a matter of time before it did. It happened on a Thursday morning, the kind of morning where you expect nothing but routine. I grabbed my coffee, slipped on my blazer, and rode the elevator up to the 12th floor. I was already planning my day in my head, client calls, deadlines, and a late meeting with the creative team. But when I walked into the office, the air felt different, heavy, quiet. People were whispering in clusters, their faces pale, their eyes darting toward the glass-walled conference room where our manager sat with a stack of folders. I felt a chill crawl down my spine. My manager, Mr. Reynolds, was usually warm, always greeting us with a smile. But when he called my name and motioned me inside, his face carried the look people wear when they're about to deliver bad news. "Emily," he started, his voice careful, too careful. "You've been one of our most dependable team members. Everyone here values your work. But the company has to make some difficult decisions." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" He sighed and slid a folder across the desk. "Your position has been eliminated. We're downsizing. I'm so sorry." For a moment, I just stared at him. His words didn't make sense. I'd given this company everything. Late nights, weekends, holidays. I was always there. Reliable Emily. Always reliable. But none of it mattered. By the end of that meeting, I was holding a cardboard box filled with the small pieces of my life. Framed photos, pens, a mug Rachel had given me that said "World's Best Sister" in bold letters. My hands shook as I carried it to the elevator. I wasn't just thinking about me, I was thinking about them. The rent, the tuition, the groceries, the endless list of bills waiting for me at home. How was I supposed to tell them? That night, I sat on the edge of my bed staring at my phone. My stomach churned, my throat tight. This was the first time in my adult life that I didn't have the money to cover everything. And for once, I needed them. I called Mom first. Her voice was warm, casual. "Emily, sweetheart, how are you? Did you send the transfer for the gas bill? Your father's been asking." I swallowed hard. "Mom, I lost my job today." Silence. Then a soft laugh, like she thought I was joking. "Don't say such things. What do you mean you lost your job?" "I mean they let me go. Downsizing. I don't know how long it'll take to find another one. I might need help with the bills for a little while." There was another pause, longer this time. When she finally spoke, her tone had shifted, sharp, defensive. "Emily, you know things are tight here. Your father's pension barely covers anything, and your siblings, well, they're still finding their footing. We really can't do much right now." My heart sank. "Not even a little." She sighed heavily, as though I was the one being unreasonable. "You're strong, Emily. You've always managed before. You'll figure it out." When I hung up, my hands trembled. I tried Michael next. He picked up with his usual cocky tone. "Hey sis, what's up?" I explained, carefully, almost ashamed. But before I could even finish, he cut me off. "Emily, I wish I could help, but I've got this new business idea I'm pouring everything into. You wouldn't understand. It's a risk, but it'll pay off soon. Besides, you've always been the strong one. You'll be fine." Sophia said she was saving up for a new car. Ethan laughed and said, "What, you're broke now? That's funny. You should have planned better." One by one, they all turned me away. That night, I curled up on my bed, staring at the ceiling, my chest heavy with a pain I couldn't put into words. All the years I had sacrificed, all the times I had carried them on my back. And now, when I needed them for the very first time, they had left me standing in the dock. I didn't know it then, but that was the night something inside me cracked. And once it cracked, it could never be fixed again. I thought the silence would hurt the most. The silence when Mom dismissed me, when Michael brushed me off, when Sophia made excuses, when Ethan mocked me. But I was wrong. What hurt the most wasn't silence. It was the whispers. Because soon I started hearing things. It began with Aunt Diane. Rachel and I had gone to the grocery store one Saturday, trying to make my budget stretch far enough to cover a week's worth of food. I was already embarrassed by the way I counted every dollar, every coupon, every discount sticker I could find. Then, at the end of the frozen foods aisle, I heard her voice. Aunt Diane. You know Emily, she lost her job. Can you imagine? After all that showing off, walking around like she's better than everyone else. Now look at her begging for help. My body froze. She didn't know I was there. She didn't know I could hear her. But her words sliced through me like glass. And worse, I realized she wasn't alone. Mom was standing right next to her. Mom's voice was lower, but clear enough for me to catch. I told her not to live above her means. She never listens, always acting like she knows everything. Now she expects us to clean up her mess. I dropped the box of frozen vegetables in my hand. It hit the floor with a dull thud. Rachel glanced at me, her eyes wide, but I couldn't move. My chest was so tight, I thought I might pass out right there between the shelves. They weren't just refusing to help me. They were mocking me, spreading my pain like gossip. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, the lights dim, the silence pressing in. The walls felt closer. The air felt heavier. I had given everything to them. My youth, my energy, my money, my dreams. And this was how they saw me? A fool, a failure, a lesson to be whispered about over frozen peas. I buried my face in my hands and sobbed. Not the quiet kind of crying you can hide, the ugly kind, the raw, gasping, chest-heaving kind that leaves your throat sore. Rachel came over later, wrapping her arms around me, whispering, Emily, you don't deserve this. You've done more for them than anyone should. They don't see it, but I do. I see you. Her kindness was a lifeline, but even her words couldn't patch the hole inside me, because something had shattered, and when something shatters like that, you can't just put it back together. For the first time in my life, I stopped believing in family. I stopped believing in the idea that they would ever see me as more than what I could give them. And in that darkness, a new thought began to form. A dangerous thought. What if I stopped giving? What if I let them taste the emptiness they had left me with? What if I walked away? The days after that night felt like moving through fog. I woke up heavy. I moved slow. Food tasted like paper, and even getting dressed felt like a battle I was losing. But Rachel wouldn't let me stay in that darkness. She showed up at my door every morning with coffee, dragging me outside for walks, making me laugh even when I didn't want to. She reminded me that life wasn't over, even if it felt like it, and slowly I started to believe her. One morning, she pushed her laptop across the table at me. Look, she said, her voice bright with determination. There's a networking event downtown tomorrow. You should go, meet people, make connections. You can't stay in this hole forever, Emily. I wanted to say no. I wanted to stay in bed and hide from the world. But something inside me stirred. A tiny spark, faint but stubborn. Maybe she was right. Maybe I wasn't finished. The next day, I put on my best blazer, the one I usually saved for presentations, and forced myself to walk into that crowded conference hall. The air buzzed with voices, laughter, the clinking of coffee cups. At first, I felt out of place, like an imposter. Everyone else seemed so polished, so successful. But then I remembered something. I had been polished once too. I had been successful. And maybe, just maybe, I could be again. So I straightened my shoulders, smiled, and introduced myself. Hi, I'm Emily Carter. That was the beginning. Over the next few weeks, I threw myself into rebuilding. I applied for jobs, connected with people, attended workshops. I read books I had never had time for before. I learned new skills online, things I should have done years ago if I hadn't been so busy paying everyone else's bills. And slowly, doors began to open. I got freelance offers. Small at first, a marketing campaign here, a consulting project there. But it was something. It was mine. And with every little win, I felt stronger. Of course, my family had no idea. They assumed I was still down, still struggling, still the failure they whispered about. They didn't call often anymore, unless they wanted something. And when I didn't answer, they gossiped more. But I didn't care. For once, their voices weren't the ones guiding me. For once, I was listening to my own. One night, as I sat at my kitchen table drafting a proposal for a potential client, I caught my reflection in the window. And for the first time in a long time, I saw someone I recognized. Not the family's savior, not the ATM machine, not the failure, just Emily. And she was rising again. The first time I got paid again, I cried. Not because it was a fortune, it wasn't. Just a modest check from a small business I'd helped with their social media campaign. But it was money I had earned for myself, by myself, without anyone else attached to it. I held that check in my hands and thought, this one doesn't belong to them. This belongs to me. It felt like freedom on paper. From there, things began to snowball. One client recommended me to another. That client recommended me to 3 more. Soon, I wasn't just scraping by. I was building something, a reputation, a career I could shape with my own hands. Every day, I worked harder, longer, smarter. And for the first time in years, I wasn't doing it to pay someone else's rent or tuition. I was doing it for me. I upgraded my laptop, bought myself a new coat, even treated Rachel to dinner as a thank you for refusing to let me sink. Small things maybe, but they meant the world. Meanwhile, the phone calls from home kept coming. At first, I ignored them. Then, when I finally answered one, it was Mom's voice, sharp and frantic. "Emily, the mortgage is late again. We're getting letters. When can you send the money?" I closed my eyes, my chest tightening. The old guilt tried to creep back in, whispering, "They need you." But this time, I didn't give in. "I can't help with that right now," I said simply. Her silence was deafening. Then came the sharp intake of breath, the disbelief. "Emily, are you saying you're going to let this family fall apart?" I gripped the phone tighter. "I'm saying I can't carry everyone anymore." She gasped like I had slapped her. "You've changed. Success has made you cold." I almost laughed. Success? If only she knew how much I was still clawing my way back. But instead I said, maybe I've just stopped being blind. And then I hung up. That was the first time I said no, and it lit something inside me. Not guilt, not shame, but power. Because I realized they couldn't force me anymore. Weeks later, I passed by the old family house on my way to a client meeting. The paint was peeling, the lawn was uncut. A notice was taped to the door. For a moment, I stood across the street, watching. It looked nothing like the home I had grown up in. It looked tired, broken, almost like it was reflecting them. A family so used to leaning on me that they didn't know how to stand on their own. I should have felt sad, maybe even guilty. But instead, I felt something else. A quiet satisfaction. They had built their comfort on my back for years. Now, without me, they were finally feeling the weight of their own choices. And it was only the beginning. It started with the lights. One chilly November evening, while I was curled up on my couch drafting a proposal for a new client, my phone buzzed with a flurry of messages. First from Sophia, then Ethan, then finally Mom. "Emily, the power's been cut off. They shut it down this afternoon. We can't even cook dinner. Do something." I stared at the screen, my heart steady in a way it never had been before. The old me would have panicked, pulled out my credit card, and rushed to cover the bill before anyone else noticed. But not this time. This time, I let the messages pile up. 10 minutes later, another one came. Mom, Emily, your father is furious. He says you're abandoning us. You know he has high blood pressure. This stress isn't good for him. Please, you have to fix this. I placed the phone face down on the table and returned to my proposal. For the first time in my life, I chose myself over them. But their unraveling didn't stop at the lights. The next week, Ethan called me from campus, his voice dripping with entitlement. Emily, the deadline for the tuition payment is tomorrow. I know you've got a new job. I need to pay ASAP. Do you know how embarrassing it has been for me? I couldn't register for classes. They treated me like some kind of broke loser. I bit back the words I wanted to say. Welcome to my world. Instead, I kept my voice calm. I can't help with that anymore, Ethan. His voice shot up an octave. What do you mean you can't help? You always help. That's your job. My job, I repeated softly. No, Ethan. My job is to live my life. The rest was a choice I'm not making anymore. He cursed under his breath and hung up. The same week Ethan threw his tantrum, I landed my biggest client yet, a mid-sized clothing brand that needed a full digital marketing overhaul. The contract was more than I had ever earned in a single project. When I signed the dotted line, my hands trembled, not from fear, but from exhilaration. I was no longer just surviving, I was building something real. At night, though, when the calls came in, I couldn't help but picture them, Dad pacing the living room in the dark, furious at the silence where light once was. Mom is on the phone with Aunt Diane, painting me as the villain. Sophia was whining about how hard it was to live without heat. Ethan is throwing fits because the world didn't bend to him anymore. And Michael? Probably spinning another fantasy business idea while avoiding responsibility altogether. For years I had carried them. For years I had believed that if I didn't, the world would fall apart. Now I was watching it fall apart and realizing the world didn't end. Theirs did, not mine. It was a Sunday afternoon when the knock came. At first I thought it was Rachel. She would usually drop by unannounced with snacks and stories to brighten my day. But when I opened the door, my stomach dropped. It wasn't Rachel. It was them. Mom stood at the front, her face twisted in a mixture of anger and desperation. Dad hovered behind her, his lips pressed in a hard line. Sophia leaned against the railing with her arms crossed, eyes rolling like this was all beneath her. Ethan paced back and forth, muttering under his breath. And Michael just stood there, hands in his pockets, eyes darting everywhere but my face. I froze in the doorway. What are you doing here? Mom didn't wait for an invitation. She pushed past me into the apartment. Emily, we need to talk. Dad followed, grumbling something about how ridiculous this all was. The others spilled in like they owned the place. My safe space, my little apartment that had finally begun to feel like mine, suddenly felt crowded, suffocating. Emily, Mom began, her voice sharp. Do you know what you've done to this family? The lights are off. The mortgage is behind. Ethan can't stay in school. We're falling apart, and it's your fault. I blinked, stunned. My fault? I've been paying those bills for 10 years. I carried all of you when nobody else would. And now that I stop, it's suddenly my fault? Dad slammed his hand on the table, making me jump. Don't talk back to your mother. You're the eldest. It's your duty. There it was again, duty, the word that had chained me for so long. I took a slow breath. No, Dad, it's not my duty. I'm not responsible for fixing mistakes none of you are willing to own. Sophia scoffed. Wow, Emily, success really went to your head, huh? You think you're too good for us now? I turned to her, my voice steady. No, Sophia. I just finally realized I was never good enough for you. Her mouth fell open, but before she could reply, Ethan exploded. You're heartless. You're selfish. Do you know how embarrassing it is for me on campus? People are laughing at me because I couldn't pay tuition. You ruined my life. I stared at him, my chest tightening, but not from guilt, but from fury. I ruined your life? Ethan, I gave you a life. I paid for your school, your books, your rent, and you never once said thank you. The room fell silent. For a moment, all I could hear was the sound of my own breathing. And then Mom, her voice low and trembling, said the words that would seal it all. If you walk away from this family, Emily, don't bother coming back. Her threat hung in the air like a knife. I looked around the room at their angry faces, their accusing eyes, their endless entitlement. And then I felt it, the freedom of choice. I already did, I whispered. The words slipped out before I could stop them. I already did. The silence that followed was heavier than anything I had ever felt in that apartment. Mum's eyes widened like I had just slapped her. Dad's jaw tightened until I thought his teeth might crack. Sophia blinked, then let out a sharp laugh, as if she couldn't believe what she'd just heard. Ethan muttered something under his breath, pacing faster. And Michael? Michael finally looked me in the eye, his face pale, like he realized this wasn't just another one of my empty warnings. I meant it. I had already walked away. Mom's voice broke first, sharp and trembling. After everything we've done for you, Emily, after raising you, feeding you, giving you life, this is how you repay us, by turning your back when we need you the most? The guilt she wanted me to feel didn't come. Not anymore. Raising me was your job, I said softly, and I've been repaying you ever since I was 21. But it was never enough for you. Nothing ever was. Dad's fist slammed against the table again, the sound echoing through the room. Ungrateful child, you think you can shame us like this? You think you're better than us? I met his glare with steady eyes. For years, I had shrunk under that voice, that authority, but not anymore. No, Dad, I don't think I'm better. I just finally realized I don't deserve to be treated worse. Sophia rolled her eyes dramatically. Oh, here we go. Emily the martyr, acting like she's the victim. You've had it good, sis. You chose to pay the bills. Nobody forced you. I turned on her so quickly she flinched. Nobody forced me, Sophia. Every time I tried to say no, Mom cried, Dad yelled, and you all guilted me until I gave in. You called me selfish if I bought myself one nice thing. You drained me until I had nothing left, and now that I stop, I'm the villain? Her smirk faded, her mouth tightening. Ethan threw his hands up. You know what? Fine. Go live your little selfish life. But don't come crawling back when it all falls apart again. You'll regret this, Emily. I almost laughed. The irony was too sharp to ignore. That's funny, Ethan, because when I lost my job, I came to you, all of you, and every single one of you turned me away. So tell me, who should regret what? His face turned red, but he had no answer. For a moment, the room was still again. Tense, heavy, like we were standing on the edge of something final. And then Mom spoke, her voice quieter this time, but laced with venom. You've changed, Emily. You're not the daughter I raised. I straightened my shoulders, feeling something inside me harden into steel. You're right, I said. I'm not. They left soon after, slamming the door behind them, their anger still ringing in the air like thunder. When the echo faded, I sank into my couch, my hands shaking. For the first time in my life, I had stood my ground against them, all of them at once. And though my body trembled, my heart felt lighter than it ever had before. I whispered into the empty room, more to myself than anyone else. This is the beginning. The apartment felt different after they left. For years, it had been my safe space, but also my prison. A place where I answered late-night calls, where I wired money in silence, where I cried after arguments that always ended the same way, me giving in. But now it felt like mine, truly mine. I sat in the stillness, breathing it in. No buzzing phone, no guilt pressing on my chest, just me. It was terrifying and it was beautiful. The weeks that followed were busy, the good kind of busy. My freelance work started to take off in ways I hadn't expected. That clothing brand I'd signed? They introduced me to another client and then another. Soon, I was juggling more projects than I thought I could handle. I upgraded my workspace, purchased a new desk, and invested in better software. For once, I wasn't pouring money into keeping a sinking ship afloat. I was building something solid, something that belonged only to me. And with every success, I felt stronger. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. Rachel told me one afternoon over coffee, her voice low but urgent. I ran into Aunt Diane at the store. Emily, she's talking about you to everyone. Says you abandoned your family. Says you've become arrogant. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the dark swirl settle at the bottom of the cup. Of course she is. That's what they do best. Gossip. Rachel leaned closer. People are starting to believe it. She makes it sound like you just cut them off for no reason. A bitter laugh escaped me. No reason? I carried them for a decade, Rachel. A decade. And the first time I needed help, they treated me like dirt. If people believed Diane's lies, let them. They weren't there. They didn't see. Still, the words stung. Because I knew how fast gossip spread, and I knew my family would use it to turn themselves into the victims, painting me as the villain in their story. But here's the thing about villains. Sometimes villains are just heroes who finally stopped bleeding for people who never cared. That evening, I called the client directly, trying to stay calm. Hi, this is Emily Carter. I just received an email about delayed payment. Could you explain what happened? The voice on the other end hesitated. Miss Carter, I don't want to overstep, but we've been contacted anonymously. We were told you've had issues with mismanaging funds, that you left debts unpaid. It raised a few red flags. My throat went dry. That's not true. I've never mismanaged funds, and I don't have debts. I understand, but you see how it looks. We just want to be cautious. I hung up, my hands trembling. Anonymous, but I knew better. This had my mother's fingerprints all over it, or Aunt Diane's, maybe both. Not content with draining me, not content with abandoning me, they were now trying to poison the life I was building. When Rachel came by that night, she found me pacing my living room. They're trying to ruin me, I spat, my voice breaking. They can't control me anymore, so now they're trying to destroy me. Rachel grabbed my shoulders. Then don't let them. Emily, you've worked too hard to let their lies undo you. Prove them wrong. Her words steadied me, but deep inside, fury boiled. Because this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was war. 2 days later, I got another call, this time from Ethan. Emily, he started, his tone slick and smug. Heard you're having trouble keeping your clients. Maybe if you'd helped us out, you wouldn't be in this mess. My chest tightened. You did this. He laughed. Family talks, Em. People listen. Maybe next time, don't turn your back on us. And then he hung up. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding. For years, I had sacrificed everything for them, and now they were actively trying to destroy me. The betrayal was complete. And in that moment, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't just walking away anymore. I was going to rise so high that they'd choke on their own lies. It was Rachel who told me first. We were out for lunch, a little diner tucked away on a quiet street. I had just signed another client and was finally beginning to enjoy small luxuries again, like eating out without counting every dollar. Rachel leaned across the table, her voice low. Emily, I drove past your parents' house yesterday. My stomach tightened. And? Her eyes flickered with hesitation. There was a foreclosure notice taped to the front door. For a moment, I said nothing. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and sharp. Foreclosure. The house I had kept afloat for years. through my paychecks, my sleepless nights, my sacrifices, was slipping through their hands. Rachel reached for my hand. I'm sorry. I know it's still your family, no matter what. I pulled in a deep breath, steadying myself. No, I said softly. It's their choices catching up to them, not mine. But as much as I tried to stay detached, the news spread quickly. By the weekend, neighbors were whispering. Friends of the family posted subtle comments on social media, the kind meant to look sympathetic but dripping with judgment. Hard times for the Carters, praying they find strength. So sad to see such a proud family brought so low. And behind every comment, I could hear it. The unspoken blame directed at me, because they weren't telling the full story. They weren't saying that for a decade. I had carried that house on my back, that I had paid every bill, every emergency, every crisis. That was the only reason the Carters had lasted this long, because of me. No. In their version, I was the cold daughter who had abandoned them. Then came the call from Michael. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. His voice was unusually calm. Emily, I know things have been rough between us, but the bank's about to take the house. Mom and Dad are a mess. This is your chance to step in and fix it before it's too late. I almost laughed. My chance? Michael, I have already fixed it for 10 years. I fixed it so many times I nearly broke myself. And now you think I should do it again? His tone hardened. If you let this happen, you'll regret it. Everyone will know you could have saved your own family and chose not to. I closed my eyes, anger surging. Michael, for years, I saved this family, and none of you cared. None of you thanked me. When I needed you, you turned away. So don't call me now. Don't ever call me again. I hung up before he could answer. That night, I sat at my desk, a contract spread out before me, a new client, a bigger project, a brighter future. And outside, the Carters' world was unraveling. The house that had been my prison was collapsing. The same walls that once held me captive under duty and guilt were crumbling under their own weight. And for the first time, I didn't feel sorrow. I felt relieved. I used to believe my life belonged to my family. Every paycheck, every late night at the office, every sacrifice I made, all of it was for them. I thought love meant giving until there was nothing left of me. But now, sitting in the corner office of a company I built with my own 2 hands, I finally know the truth. Love doesn't mean slavery. Family doesn't mean chains. And my life has always been mine. It didn't happen overnight. The rebuilding was slow, painful, step by step. But the same determination I once used to hold everyone else together, I finally used on myself. Today, my business is thriving. I have 6 employees, a growing list of clients, and more opportunities than I can handle. I travel for conferences, attend networking events, and come home to an apartment that feels like a sanctuary rather than a cage. For the first time in my life, I am free, and I'm not alone anymore. Daniel has been by my side through it all. At first, just a colleague, then a friend, and finally something more. He never asks me to carry him. He walks beside me. When I win, he cheers. When I stumble, he steadies me without judgment. With him, I've learned what support really feels like, the kind that lifts instead of drains. Sometimes, when we sit on the balcony with glasses of wine, looking out over the city lights, I wonder why I ever thought love had to hurt. Of course, the Carters haven't disappeared completely. Every few weeks, a message slips through. Different numbers, different voices, but always the same plea. Emily, the bank is serious this time. Emily, your father's health is getting worse. Emily, if you cared about us at all, you'd come back. And sometimes the tone changes. You've become heartless. You're selfish. You'll regret this when you're alone. But here's the truth. I'm not alone. I have Rachel, who stood by me when no one else did. I have Daniel, who loves me without conditions. And most importantly, I have myself, the one person I had ignored for too long. The final test came last month. I was in the middle of preparing for a major presentation when my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. It was Mom. Her voice was weak, trembling. "Emily, please. Your father. He's sick. We can't afford the hospital bills. They're saying he needs treatment right away. If you don't help, I don't know what will happen." For a moment, old instincts stirred. The urge to save, to fix, to step in like I always had. But then I remembered that day in the grocery store, her voice mocking me, calling me reckless, treating my pain like entertainment. I remembered the nights I cried alone, the years I gave up my dreams, the way they all turned their backs when I needed them most. I took a deep breath and cut the call. Instead of sending the money, I decided to make an investigation to confirm if my father was really in a critical condition. But my investigation source informed me that it was a plot to trap me back into guilt and extort money from me. The pain I felt was deeper than I have ever experienced. I cried bitterly that night because I wished my family could just, for once, be open and reciprocate the genuine care and love I have for them. But no, they saw me as a walking ATM that is forever in their debt, and I have finally satisfied my conscience. I made a promise never to fall into their ploy and tricks or allow them to guilt-trip me again. Later that evening, as I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my blazer before the presentation, I realized something. The girl who once lived in fear of disappointing her family was gone. The woman in the mirror was untouchable. I smiled at my reflection. Not the tired, forced smile I used to wear, but a genuine one. Because I had walked away, and I wasn't looking back. The next morning, Daniel drove me to the airport. I was flying out to speak at a national conference, something I had once only dreamed of. As we pulled up to the terminal, my phone buzzed again, another unfamiliar number. For a moment, I just stared at it. I didn't need to answer to know who it was. Another crisis, another plea, another demand dressed as love. I pressed silence, slipped the phone into my bag, and turned to Daniel with a smile. "Ready?" he asked. "More than ready," I said. And with that, I walked into the airport, the world stretching out before me, free at last. Because this time, the story wasn't about saving them. It was about saving myself. And for the first time in my life, that was enough.